Hello, and welcome to episode 28 of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode, we saw a few things scattered around the world, like the collapse of Persia, for example. But with that, let's get right into this episode. Alright, this is going to be a very straightforward episode because it's going to be mostly one story. And that story is going to start with a war between India and their allies and the two Chinese countries, as well as this little rump state here. And this is going to start as there's not really a casus belli. It's just like India says that this is rightfully Indian land or whatever, and they make their allies also start invading. As they're quickly able to take these two western cities from Yangtze, and Vietnam is able to start invading into China once again. I think this happened in the last episode, actually. And this isn't going to take too long. They actually are going to be able to fight back at first, with Vietnam notably struggling. And something interesting is going to happen as Sumatra will get invaded into by Indonesia, who's becoming more and more of an English puppet. They're not quite an English puppet just yet. They still have some autonomy. But really all of their power comes from England, and if England ever decided to ditch them, they would be screwed. But yeah, Sumatra has been seized, and they've fully become modern-day Indonesia with some extra land. Any land west of this line-ish has fully fallen under Indian control at this point. With Vietnamese help, any land west of this line is probably under Indian control. To make things a little better for China, they will have another country join their alliance, which will be Korea, as well as North China. So this is all of the Chinese countries working together. We'll start to advance the front line westward as China is able to, with some troops from these guys, help out Vietnam, or take out Vietnam, while Yangtze is able to start pushing in, taking back one of their two major cities that they'd lost, and forcing India to retreat from the other. However, India is really strong, and also they have good generals and stuff. So they will start an invasion over to here, and you might be like, well, Yangtze can still just go through their ally, but they know that the logistics are not set up since North China, it looked like for a while they were going to join India's alliance, and they decided to switch sides when they saw how overpowered India was becoming. Okay, sorry about that. But the logistics is just not there, so they're not really able to do this, as these two cities will once again fall, basically meaning the entire rest of this region has fallen. Scare this country, which I think I call Mongolia. I mean, this country is also Mongolia. This is East Mongolia, we'll say. East Mongolia will be scared into joining this alliance, and they will start pushing back, retaking the city, along with North China, as they work together to try and push back against India. However, India has sent a lot of troops to Vietnam to start helping them out against China, and it's working, as China is starting to fail, and it seems that even with the entirety of East Asia going against them, India might still win, as they kind of basically got to bypass the Himalayas by having land on the other side of them, which is kind of the main reason that India can't invade China, or vice versa, today. But China's capital will be captured, as they just have a series of humiliating defeats, and they're forced to leave the alliance as a term of, basically they sign their own peace treaty. They don't technically surrender, they're technically just suing for peace because it's not unconditional, and they technically negotiate this, but China is basically forced to become a rump state and leave the war. And this is going to be very bad for the alliance, as India is just too strong, as they will retake that major city as well as some other major cities, and they are pushing very deep, and Vietnam will fully push Yangtze out of their territory, starting to threaten their capital. And another thing is that China has to allow Vietnam through their territory as part of the peace treaty, because they were really humiliated by that loss. It was really bad for them, which is helping Vietnamese logistics a lot and hurting Yangtze's logistics, as they lose two more cities due to China kind of having betrayed them, basically. China basically switched sides, or at least it feels like China switched sides, even though they're technically neutral. Anyway, India decides they're just going to get Mongolia out of the war since they're the weakest country by far in their alliance, besides this country, which is going to be impossible to take out. And so they basically have a 5 cities plan because outside of these 5 cities, there's literally no one living in this country. Like, literally 95% of the population lives in these 5 cities. It's actually pretty urbanized for a country. But because no one's living anywhere else, they're able to just march their armies through to these cities and take them. And with this, the country has no choice but to surrender and become a de facto Indian puppet state, with them being forced to no longer be a theocracy and instead institute a monarchy. And that also means that they are forced to join the Indian alliance, which is really bad for everyone else. And this is when the war sort of starts to spiral for the Chinese alliance, because with all of this land now open to India, they start being able to capture North China's capital, as well as helping Vietnam in taking Yangtze's capital, and it happens within like a year after taking this guy's capital. This episode is probably going to end around the year 1775-ish, probably. So it's been it's been 100 years since India formed. No, India formed. It's been like 400 years since India formed. But they're kind of nearing their peak, obviously. Anyway, things are getting really bad for the alliance as North China is hanging on for dear life. And East Siberia will officially join in on the war because they're just like, we can't do this. We can't let this happen. And other countries that will join in on the war are West Mongolia and Tibet, as well as the Philippines. And basically they're just like, we need all hands on deck. But suspiciously, Indonesia stays completely silent and does not join in on this war, remaining in their alliance with Britain. Or not Britain, England, technically. Because, yeah, that country is called England, not Britain. But Tibet adds a whole new avenue to the war, as India can actually start being properly invaded, if you could see it, but I guess you can't for some reason. India can start properly being invaded, and Tibet is going to be really hard to invade, so it's actually really effective, as they also, religiously, these areas are Lime religion, and so they kind of submit to Tibet, and this is causing an annoyance for India, who has to withdraw a lot of their troops, mostly from North China, to start pushing Tibet back, as North China is able to liberate its capital and fight on for another day. The Philippines will start an invasion of the territories that Vietnam seized from China, and Vietnam is not doing well, as they kind of lose all of this land, and Yangtze starts pushing back India over here. However, India has completely pushed them Tibet back to the border and is struggling, but very slightly is invading into Tibet. But they're definitely struggling, as you can see. However, the Philippines will make an interesting deal with China, and they'll basically say, we will sell you back your land, but in exchange, you don't have to pay us money, you have to rejoin the alliance, and China will take it, because otherwise they would have lost that land no matter what happens. But they don't want to live in a world where it basically controls the whole world. And things are finally looking up for the alliance, as China starts taking back a lot of their old land, and Vietnam is not doing very well. India is really struggling in this front, and they kind of give up, and they kind of let Tibet have it and just set up a defense of their old border. The front over here has started to stall as West Mongolia has become a new priority, and this has allowed East Mongolia to start being invaded by East Siberia. West Siberia is cautiously watching this war, hoping not to have to join it. But anyway, East Mongolia is going to invade into West Mongolia, seizing their capital. And then India is going to command them to try invading into Tibet, which will be such a massive failure that not only will West Mongolia free itself, but the puppet government over here is basically just like going to collapse. The king is executed by basically a rowdy mob, and this country will kind of just collapse, like not just like a partial collapse, like a full collapse. So all the land that was previously controlled by the puppet government collapses, and the land that was controlled by these militaries is just annexed. As the Indian military quickly goes through into this territory, and there's kind of a race to quickly get this territory under control. So India will have a random colony that they're hoping to connect to at some point, but for now this is just going to be straight up Indian territory. East or West Mongolia will take this territory. East Siberia, who's neutral, will take this territory. West Siberia. East Siberia, who's not neutral, will take this, and then and then Tibet will end up with control of that, as these guys have fully just collapsed and are no longer like a thing. And actually, this is not like an Indian exclave. This is just territory that's occupied by Indian troops that would go to North China if the alliance won. And right now things are going as badly for India as they will be for a while, because India's about to have a good twist of fate. They were finally able to break through into Tibet, mostly because Tibet was focused on getting this stuff, and India had armies here, whereas Tibet kind of moved their armies over here, and they take the capital of Tibet. And Tibet is kind of very rural, so there's not that many people living in the capital, but it also means the government doesn't really have anywhere else it can set up shop, so it's kind of becoming a nomadic government, and it kind of really can't command its troops. So it decides to try to give its land to West Mongolia, but they fumble, and instead the Indian armies over here will manage to take this land. And at this point, Tibet kind of lacks a government, as India is kind of able to capitulate the whole country, as Tibet will fall. With English help, the Indonesia will commence an invasion of the Philippines. They will not instantly annex it. You can kind of see it. It's not the best visibility, but whatever. They have started this invasion of the Philippines, and yeah, with English help, they're going to completely occupy this, as China will seize Taiwan, and they will fully annex the Philippines into their country, as the Philippines has kind of just fallen. And this is going to be the final nail in the coffin for the Chinese alliance, so spoiler alert, they're not going to win. As China doing this was a waste of their troops, as Vietnam is able to start pushing back. They seize Taiwan, and the Chinese government will kind of be overthrown in the capital because people want them to surrender, as Vietnam will turn China into a Vietnamese puppet state, as they are forced to switch to this, and ideologically they are still a monarchy. West Mongolia will be paid money to leave their alliance because they're like, what are we still doing here? And the same thing will happen to East Siberia. So for now, those guys are fine, although they won't be fine in the future, maybe. Let's turn off ideologies and alliances, because this tiny country is completely destroyed. And with this, things will really start to collapse. Korea wants to back out, but after they get humbled, and this is mostly not Vietnamese troops, this is mostly Indian troops. But yeah, I can spare you the details of everything that happens. Essentially, all you need to know is that this did not end well for the alliance. I think that's every alliance member. But right as they are in the middle of signing a peace treaty with these guys, in which these guys are probably going to be dissolved and replaced with Indian puppets, an interesting development will take place. As out of nowhere, Persian troops will start pummeling their way into India, and everyone's like, what is going on? And then they realize, hey, these aren't just Persian, they are just Persian troops, but they're not using Persian weapons. These are European made weapons. They can't tell which country made them, but they know that these are European made weapons. And with the help of the Persians, things are going very badly. And then Indonesia will start an invasion into Vietnam, and this will go horribly for Vietnam, as they completely just collapse. The Japanese government hears about what's happening, and they finally decide to break their isolationism and basically start trying to get on Europe's level. So this is mirroring our own Japan, but you know what? If I have one country that mirrors our own Taiwan's version of that country, so be it. But India's capital will fall to the Europeans, who then overtly, and I'm going to use the Andalusian color, They were one of the. Actually, it was all the Europeans were supporting Persia. The Andalusians will make a landing here. The Spanish will make a landing in the south of India. And the French. The Belgians are not really interested in colonization anymore because they're democratic. The French will make landings in the Indian puppet state mostly, but also in Bangladesh. And their demands are very simple. They basically demand that Europe gets a lot of control over Asia. And India was not expecting this. And turns out even being the strongest non-European country is nothing compared to being the weakest European country, at least at this time. And so, yeah, let's see what happens. And this is the new map of Asia. I bet you didn't see that coming. I bet you did not see that was what's gonna happen. Ideology-wise, we do need... Oh, and then Tibet is reset as a monarchy. So yeah, Spanish colony, Andalusian protectorate, independent Indian state, whose capital's right here. Persia against the Europeans defeat the pretender and give this in exchange for Persia helping them out. Giant French colony. I told you French was the most powerful state in the world, or France. China's restored, Yangtze's restored. Belgian colony, because Belgium wanted something after all. North China split into 3. Korea stays intact. Japan stays intact. Indonesia, which is basically an English puppet, gets all of this land. And as well as that, I changed my mind. They're getting this. But yeah, that's the episode. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.